Come on over immediately. Dodo B, it's great to have you on set. Dan Ives Dan, Head of Technology Research at Bush Security. There's always a lot of information in the tech sector for us to discuss. But I want to start with the Microsoft portion of this because we always talk about whether the market feels like it's 1999 on the verge of 2000. And now we're talking about Microsoft being up for regulatory review, which feels like 99 to 100,000. If KH were staying, though, things would be different. I believe that the FTC's days are numbered, and that you eventually get a more, we'll call it a business-friendly kind of chair of the FTC in there. And we just think bark's worse than a bite when it comes to Microsoft. Microsoft went through that battle in the 90s versus Dodge and US government, ultimately wanted look you're definitely seeing the strong get stronger in terms of big tech, and as much as this is really going to be a UFC battle that continues to really play out between big tech, but I just think when it's all said and done that the noise is going to be more than the reality, not just for Microsoft. But I think even when it comes to Google and others, how much is going to hinge though on the Trump administration, the picks for Dodge antitrust and FDC, because there are a number of names floated for each of those positions, and not all of them are, I would say, raw or let tech go wild. Some of them are much more focused on antitrust, and as I'll call it, maybe potentially a similar approach to what we've seen in the last couple of years. Yeah, think on DJ you definitely get someone probably in between. I mean, look, Vance is obviously antiqued, so you're going to definitely have someone that's a little on the aggressive side toward tech. But I think the big issue is on FTC, because for big tech, it has been a nightmare in terms of the FTC, her being gone, which we believe is ultimately will be the next step when it comes to January that's bullish for tech. I think look a big reason when Trump came in when you think about out the FTC, that's bullish or big tech. I think less regulations and then who's at the table right next to Trump, it's Musk. And I think that's going to also play a big role unofficially in terms of some of these picks and where this all goes. But I continue to think in terms of this AI revolution, it is 10 p.m. at that party that goes to 4 o'clock a.m. And I don't see any of these appointments that's changing that party or that party closes early. I think we have a tech market that goes well into 2025-2026, and I think a lot of this sort of noise that we see here, more opportunities to own these names rather than time to get nervous to you buy Tesla here. Then given the rally, we've seen the torrid rally we've seen this month, I think get the popcorn out, because I believe Tesla is a stock that could ultimately double from here over the next 18 months. It's been obviously parabolic move, but as you talk about autonomous itself, we think is worth $1 trillion. So when you think today Nvidia is the most undervalued AI name in the market, it is not ridiculous. It must be conservative to think could this be a $5, $600 stock as the autonomous ultimately plays out. I think the margin story is definitely stabilized here. And I think investors look, the haters continue to hate. They hate it at $50, they'll hate it here. But I think we sit here, and this will be sort of a golden star in terms of when you look at the market in 2025 in terms of what we see for Tesla. I believe $2 trillion on the horizon. So joining me now is Jordan Klein, Managing Director and Tech Media and Telecom Desk Analyst at Mizuho Securities, to talk a little bit about the divergence that we're seeing there. Jordan, thank you for having me. What gives? What do you make of it? It's a great question. And I believe that because semiconductors are the most cyclical and anticipatory sector of technology, they will always be trading at current prices. Excuse me, but given the uncertainty in the global macro backdrop, especially with Trump's export controls, tariffs, and demand, I believe that there is a lot of uncertainty. If you take away Nvidia and the AI trade, for example, they are simply not reporting beats and raises that investors want to see. And on the other hand, all this money into the end of the year is chasing alpha, and that's coming from software in areas like fintech. This has been one of those kind of conventional wisdom points for decades at this point, which is that, as you point out, the semiconductors may be a leading indicator for the rest of technology because they are that forward-looking cyclical type sector out there. If that's the case, shouldn't we be worried about a possible perhaps stalling out or a down move later on in 2025? If those semiconductor stocks right now are starting to tail off, well, that's a great point. And I think that's why investors are taking in a very much a wait and see approach as opposed to buy now, it'll get better in a quarter or two. we're going to have a bunch of tech conferences coming up. The management teams will speak and present to investors. I don't think you're going to learn and hear anything dramatically different. I think that the companies that are more closely affiliated with the AI data center build-out are going to sound fantastic. But broadly speaking, those other sectors I mentioned that have been soft, I don't think you're going to see enough visibility and clarity to convince people that anything's around any improvements around the corner. So like I said, I agree. I think that you're going to see these stocks kind of continue to lag now. The good news is that these stocks eventually will find to bottom. And then as soon as these companies start maybe even cutting numbers, let's say the stocks actually react favorably, because it's almost discounted in the price. That's another thing I think. If we get the Trump administration, we get more clarity on the tariffs, we get these Biden export controls out of the way. And known then, I think some investors will start to figure that these stocks have already discounted some of this negative news flow, and they'll start to trade higher. Welcome back to Squawk Box. An interesting story to tell you about this morning. Walmart now saying that it is ending some of its diversity initiatives. It's removing some LGBT-related merchandise from its website and winding down a not-for-profit that funded programs for minorities, in addition to changing the title of its Chief Diversity Officer position to Chief Belonging Officer. The corporation is now removing the phrase diversity, equity, and inclusion from its corporate documentation. After receiving criticism from conservative groups, Walmart has joined an increasing number of businesses that have reduced its DI measures. Tractor provisions, as I mentioned earlier. Roddy Starbuck, the activist behind Lowe's, Ford, Moles, and Coors, has led anti-DI and anti-DI campaigns against consumer-facing companies across the nation. Last week, he warned Walmart executives that he would be doing a story on "wokeness" at Walmart. Walmart claimed that these improvements are being made by CH, who has been working on the project for a few years, and that they were not the outcome of their discussion with Starbucks. I'm not sure if that is him. I adore a man bun. Based on your statement, I adore a man who is the one behind the video. He's the anti-DI person, and he has a man bun, which is kind of cool. I love that guy, That's the dude. Andrew, do you think about it? Am I thinking about these DI policies or the man bun? I won't get too serious about you, and we won't talk about the man bun.